This is the Justice Fighter Podcast. With attorney Gerald Griggs. Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all. Let attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justice Fighter Podcast, y'all.
What's going on, y'all? It's attorney Gerald Griggs here in the Justice Media HQ for Justice Fighter Podcast. And I am so excited about this next guest. I mean, she is the quintessential, just everything. She does it all, and she does it all with a smile. So I'm super excited to have my good friend, activist, I mean, what's the best way? She's a Renaissance woman. That's what she is. She's a Renaissance woman. Hannah, just introduce yourself to the people, but first we got to give her a round of applause. So super excited to have her here. Introduce yourself to the people, Hannah.
Hello, everyone. It is so good to be here on the Justice Fighter Podcast. Thank you all for the warm welcome. Thank you, Brother Griggs, for the introduction. I'm still tickled by some of that wonderful introduction you just gave. I'm very humbled by your words because, you know, we're out here. We're
Exactly.
Community members. We're people just out here trying to make the world a better place every day. So thank you so much for that kind introduction. My name is Hannah Joy Gebresilassie. I'm a journalist, a community organizer, an activist, an entrepreneur, and from Atlanta. I'm here just to talk about what's going on in our community and following in footsteps like yours. So just really grateful for this opportunity.
Well, we appreciate all of the hard work that you've been doing and the things you've been doing in the streets. And we kind of wanted to have you on the Justice Fighter Podcast so we could just kind of talk, have a good conversation. That's what this platform is about. But also to educate our listeners how they can get involved. So first, I just want you to give a little bit of background about yourself, where you're from, how you got on this journey.
Absolutely. I am, again, from Atlanta and Metro Atlanta. I grew up in DeKalb County and Gwinnett County. And then I went on to school at Georgia State, Georgia Tech, and then did grad school in Chicago at Northwestern University. I worked in the broadcast industry for a few years, so I was a television reporter and news anchor. And then in 2018, I decided to move back to Atlanta and start my own thing. As many of us get that entrepreneur bug, I had that. And so for the last 3 years, I was working on building my own media platform and the Promote Positivity movement, working to organize impactful events in the community. And then 2020 happened, and that led me to really coming out into the streets in a way I had never done before. I had organized in various capacities, but up until that point, I had never really been on the streets protesting in that manner. And that's when I met you.
Yeah. At
the first protest I ever organized. And if you recall, you remember you were out there. I remember organizing, and I thought 200 people were going to come out, and 2,000 people showed up. And since then, I realized the power that we have as organizers, as neighbors, as community members to really just get out there and bring us together around different causes, different initiatives, whether it's protesting, whether it's an event, whether it's phone banking, and that's where we're at now.
And it's exciting because I can remember the first day I met you. It was right during the height of the George Floyd Protest, and you were in the street directing about 1,500 people. You said you expected about 200, and there were about 1,500 people in that particular location, as it was, I think, a day or so after the big protest that brought about 35,000 people. And so I know I saw you there, I saw the energy, and I saw the leadership, and I was like, let me just go over and lend my support, and we've been friends ever since. So I'm supremely proud of you. But that was not the end of your activism. Tell the people about the line of solidarity and where it was born out of and why you kept it going.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it was. It was a line of solidarity, and you know, I really believe that really was the power of the community coming together. Me being from Atlanta, I was able to contact friends, business owners, celebrities, different people to share the post on social media, to raise awareness, and you know, that certainly helped with the turnout. And at that event, we realized that people were like, well, what's next? We gonna be back here tomorrow? We're like, yeah, we gonna be back here tomorrow. So we kept it going. And we kept it going, and 10 days passed, 20 days passed, 30 days passed, still out there every single day. And of course, the crowd was getting smaller and smaller, but the power never decreased. The power was always on 1,000. And I ended up catching COVID after 30-something days. And shout out to Britt, who is the co-founder of Justice for Georgia. She was there, and she took over from there. So she was able to keep it going. So as Promote Positivity, we did it up to 50 days. And then Britt and Justice for Georgia created a whole nother space and kept that going for 224 days, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm so proud of Britt and every single person who is out there fighting, because that doesn't go to waste. That's not in vain. And so that ended up continuing on. And then, of course, that led to other initiatives and nonprofits, of course, that we'll talk about.
Yeah, and so that's why I want people to hear, the work that has gone in, because, what started as a one-day protest morphed into 200 days. And I think that's the longest we've had since the civil rights movement. So I want to be able to give you your flowers now, because not many activists can say that they were part of the birth of a new movement. So I want to give you your kudos right now, because that's awesome.
Thank you, Brother Griggs. And that means a lot. And like I said, I was out there, 30-something days, and like I said, I had to pull back, and Britt is the one who really, then took over and took it to that point of that long of an extension, with that being more than 200 days. To be exact, hello everyone. It was 224 days. I just wanted to be clear, but that was all Britt, so I want to give her flowers on air.
Shout out to Britt, yes.
As we talk about that, and everybody too.
Exactly.
And everybody too. And then I do want to mention as well, even though I Promote Positivity movement transitioned, we did keep it going in a virtual fashion.
Yes.
So you were there almost every day. We started these virtual protests. I guess that was a first of its kind, and of course 11 Alive was covering it, all these outlets, and we just wanted to use it as a avenue to educate the community, to continue applying pressure from our homes or wherever people were, and just to keep the fire burning. And I want to also give a shout out to you and give you your flowers, because you never stop letting up. You always somehow find a way to pour into every single person out in these streets. Whoever is seeking guidance, whoever is seeking mentorship, you do not hesitate. You're not bigger than anyone. You're not smaller than anyone. You are you. And I just want to thank you for always pouring into all of us, because a lot of this work is because of leadership and guidance from people like you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And, I just have some great mentors who taught me, and I want to make sure I pour into the next generation. But let's kind of talk about that transition. So we went from the line of solidarity, of course, with Promote Positivity and Justice for Georgia, and then we shifted to the virtual protest, and then we started to see that we needed to get more politically engaged. And we found ourselves outside for 30 days during session. How did that happen? I mean, what was the impetus behind that?
So in between the social justice protests
Yes.
and the session protests, there is a chunk that, of course, you, NAACP, everybody was involved in, and that was GOTV for the elections.
Exactly.
For November and January runoff elections. So, of course, we were on the ground for that. And then prior to that, there was the census.
Yes.
So when we look at this timeline, we're talking about these, social justice movement protests. Then we go into the census. Then we go into the election. Then we go into the runoff election. And then we go into session, where now, after these historic turnouts and elections, there are voting suppressive bills that come to the forefront that are trying to minimize and harm our votes.
Yes.
And that's what led us back to the Capitol. But there was another moment, because if you recall, as you know, I called you because we were trying to organize on that first day of session right around January 6th, before January 6th happened. That was the initial plan, to welcome lawmakers on their first day back to session. But what happened? January 6th. And I remember calling you, and, you gave us some wisdom. And you said, with with everything going on, with what happened in Washington, D.C., let's hold off. Now is not the time. And you were absolutely right. Absolutely right. We saw what happened in Washington, D.C., and as activists, as organizers, we do have to think about the safety of our community.
Yes.
So that, allowed us to regroup and think through some more things. And then, of course, myself, you, Crystal, Britt, Dante, a few of us came together and we started plotting again. And then that led to that anti-voter suppression day protest, and then Protect the Vote protest, and then 30 days of Protect the Vote GA, and 50 organizations and community leaders and celebrities involved, and and then that led to us raising the alarm.
Exactly. And I'm always, like I said, I'm always about giving people their flowers while they're here and while they're still in the moment. But you're being kind of shy about how powerful that protest was. And you're right. That's why I love the journalists in you journaling the whole journey, because some of those things I've forgotten about. But
we just go so hard all
we
year
do.
round.
But one thing I will not forget is 30 days outside of the Georgia Capitol when the first voter suppression bill was birthed, and you and Britt and Dante and Crystal and all of the organizations fighting when nobody was fighting. Mm-hmm. Nobody was saying anything. Texas hadn't happened. What's happening in Washington right now hadn't happened. It was ground zero in Georgia. And there was one particular event that is now historic that you were present for. And I want you to kind of take us through that day. The day I'm talking about is the day that the bill was signed, and we were at the airport, and then you got a call, you went down to the Capitol, and then what happened?
Yeah, like you said, we were at the airport, and I kid you not, that day, I had a feeling something was going to go down. I had a feeling somebody was going to get arrested. I didn't know who, I didn't know what, but, as we are at the airport applying pressure on Delta and corporations to speak out against SB 202 and change their stance, which ultimately they did, right?
Yes.
I get a call from the Capitol saying, hey, Governor Kemp is about to sign SB 202 in the next 45 minutes. And at that point, I'm like, wow, we already had this whole protest going. Mm-hmm. And I just want to shout out so many amazing other women and men in the field. It's too many to name, but it's so many people. And, I could sit here and name names for the rest of this podcast, mm-hmm. But I hope that everybody knows that they are seen, they are recognized, and they are felt. So there were a lot of people at the airport holding it down. And, I said, all right, well, let me just, maybe a few of us go to the Capitol while everybody else is here, because we can't just end this protest. Mm-hmm. So then a few of us went to the Capitol, and, once we get there, we see stuff like 3 representatives, including Representative Park Cannon. And, she greets us, and we meet her at the bottom, and she's there just to be present, because she's a fighter, and she's going to stand tall to the very end. If that means staying late to be around when the governor signs that horrible bill. So we see her, and, she's saying, we all go upstairs together, and then, all of us are kind of strategizing. There's 3 doors, I believe, around mm-hmm. the governor's office. So we're like, all right, let's post up. Everybody just be near a door. And when he comes out, then we'll be able to just apply pressure in a, nonviolent way, of course. And at that point, she's an elected official. She's trying to go in and just be there for the duration of the bill. For the signing of the bill, as she has the right to. There were other lawmakers inside of that room, let it be noted, all white men, all white Republican men who were in that room at the signing of the bill. Why couldn't she have a seat at the table? Why wasn't she allowed to be in that room? So she's just, at this point, just her trying to go in the room, trying to be a voice for us, mm-hmm. for the community members, for protesters who are out surrounding that, who are out in Georgia, who she just wanted to get in there. And then she's knocking on the door, and we're at the other door, and then she's, of course, near a couple people, and as she's knocking on the door, then she starts getting arrested. I mean, that's literally how to explain it. As she's knocking on the door, she's not doing anything else. She's literally just knocking on the door. And she starts getting arrested. And, you know, at that point, I believe I was on Instagram Live, and shout out to Tamara, who was on Facebook Live, and we're just, you know, recording it and literally watching, you know, as she's getting arrested for knocking on the door to witness the governor sign a bill. I mean, please make that make sense. You can't. And at that point, she's literally getting dragged out of the Capitol. And so myself, Tony, and a few other people were surrounding her and, you know, just trying to get out. And we just couldn't believe it was happening. It was just like, is this really happening in 2021? Y'all are literally arresting an elected official for trying to witness the governor sign a bill. Let that process. That is the Georgia we live in. That is the country we live in. And it was so aggressive, the way they abused her in that process, you know, dragging her. I mean, it was, and my heart still goes out to her, and I commend her courage and her strength during that entire process. You know, she was admitted into the jail. They took her to jail, to Rice Street. And of course, you were there. You were on call, immediately jumped on to support her throughout that entire process. And were there from the beginning to the end. And, you know, thank God she was able to come out later that night. And even at the jail, you couldn't tell the community nothing. The community was going to stand with Park because she was trying to stand for us in that moment. And so I really commend her, and I'm thankful that the charges were all dropped as they should have been. And shout out to you and the whole legal team for working on that. And I just, again, want to uplift Representative Park Cannon's strength. And I also want to commend her for staying there until the end. She never left. She was present from the beginning to end. So shout out to her.
Yeah. And, you know, the reason why I brought that up is...
and Erica Thomas,
of course,
I apologize. Yes.
Representative Thomas.
Representative Erica Thomas was also there to the very end, so shout out to her as well.
The reason I brought it up was, you know, that particular bill, and for those who don't know, SB 202 is the voter suppression bill here in Georgia. It is the very first one that was passed in the United States that started to roll back our rights where all the other states are now protesting. But we were there for 30 days. And many elected officials were outside with us, came outside to be with us. Representative Park Cannon was there when we did the 12 hours outside. And then for this incident to happen and you to be present, I wanted to give us that historical account of what happened. Because I was actually at the airport and I was leaving the airport protest had ended, and you know, I got the call to say, okay, we're going to the Capitol. And so I was driving to the Capitol, and then I got phone calls to say that Representative Cannon was arrested and we need to go to the jail. And of course, my first thought was, why was she arrested? They're in session. Georgia's Constitution prohibits arrest while in session. But of course, you know, in Georgia, you know, to certain parties, the law is a moving target and not, you know, set in stone. Of course, they had to find out the hard way that it is set in stone. But I wanted you to give that perspective, but I also want you to give a little bit earlier perspective, because this was not the first protest inside of the rotunda. There was another incident that occurred with the Georgia State Patrol, and you were present at that. So could you kind of educate our listeners about the whole process that got us to where we were with the arrest?
Yeah, that certainly wasn't the first, and it wasn't the second, it wasn't the third. There's many before that in the several years before us, right? But particularly in terms of that session, a couple weeks prior to that, maybe the timeline is a little fuzzy, but prior to that, we were continuing to protest outside, you know, fighting voter suppression, working to protect the vote. And one of our brothers, who is another amazing activist in this movement, Brother Dante Carter, who of course works alongside you in so many ways, we were all outside, and you know, he really encouraged us to continue making good trouble in the spirit of Congressman John Lewis, and to make sure our voices are heard and being felt, and encouraged us to move some of the energy inside of the Capitol so they could really hear us. And we wholeheartedly agreed and thought that was a great strategy. So a selected few of us went, again, it was a few of us that went in to join him inside. And so we go inside, and we were in the rotunda, and, they wouldn't let Representative Erica Thomas share her words on the floor during session because they were prohibiting some of the speech and limiting comments and speaking from some of the elected officials, which was inappropriate and unacceptable. But, she was with us, and we all was like, come on, we'd love to hear it. What were you going to share? And then, media's coming around. We're in the rotunda. So she starts sharing her message that she would have shared on the floor had she been given that time. So we're listening in on that. And then, and then we're all heated, and, and we just kind of move into the stairs area on the wing, and literally are exercising our First Amendment right, which we have the right to do. Mm-hmm. And, shout out to Brother Dante Carter, because one of the patrols tried to,
snatch him up.
Yeah, mm-hmm. He literally basically, put his hands on him and was attacking him. I mean, pretty much assaulting him. And he kept us cool, and imagine in that moment, had he not, it's just so unfortunate that that's the world we live in. A black man trying to stand up for our rights, getting attacked by an officer who's supposed to be protecting us and serving us. And instead, he's about to get snatched up for simply exercising his First Amendment. So we move our way in, and then another officer comes and starts to get on the horn and is starting to, tell us that we're going to have to move X, Y, and Z. And we knew how far to push it, obviously. Mm-hmm. We were going to, eventually get out the way. We know when to stop, how far to go. I think that's something you learn in this movement as well, like how far you can really push it, you mm-hmm. know. And we're not there to cause any trouble. We are literally there just trying to raise our voices for what we believe in, to defend voting rights across the state. And so at that point, one of the officers raised his blowhorn up, and then shout out to Representative Park Cannon. She comes up and makes a statement by getting in front of the blowhorn and, putting her ear on it, and then it kind of goes, like it makes like a weird noise, and then the guy like puts his arm on her, and is like about to snatch her up, and there was absolutely no reason for him to put his hands on her mm-hmm. at all. Mm-hmm. And that was an assault, and so then that ended up leading to them doing a sit-in on the stairs, not just on behalf of what happened to Representative Park Cannon, but also to draw awareness to the voting rights bill, the voting suppression bill, and what was going on with the voting rights struggle. And, you remember that. So that was what happened that day.
Yeah, and I mean, again, these are historic days that were happening all around us. I mean, whether it was a George Floyd protest, the Line of Solidarity protest, the Justice for Georgia protest, and of course, Protect the Vote protests, and then, of course, the unfortunate arrest, which we had to deal with and get dismissed. But this all led to a group of young activists that decided to form an organization that has been at the forefront of protecting the vote. Tell us about the organization and the work of Protect the Vote, GA.
Yeah, I mean, it started off as a coalition, as you know, for 30 days we were out there. We didn't even have an idea to, create anything formal at first. It was really more of just like hey, everybody, let's get out there. And then I remember the night before our first protest, I was at home and I just started making like 20 posters, and I just started writing Protect the Vote, Protect the Vote, Protect the Vote. Those were the words, and stop voter suppression. And at that point, House Bill 531 was still in the mix, and SB 241 and all these other bills. And so, we were just writing that. And so we were able to get 50 plus organizations on board during those 30 days to join us as a collective effort. And, we just called ourselves Protect the Vote during that time as a coalition. And shout out to everybody who was a part of that, all of the organizations, all of the community leaders, the organizers. I listed some earlier, some of the people. I just really want to shout out again and uplift a bunch of people who were out there. Of course, Britt, Crystal, me, yourself, Dante, Queen, Kiana, Mina, Scotty, Cree, Julius. There were so many people. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I just want to uplift everybody's name and everybody who was out there doing their part. So after session ended and, everything, transitioned back into just normalcy, we got together again, just like we did right at the start and said, well, we need to keep this going. We need to create an official organization to continue this and to really do this work year round, so that way we're not always having to be reactionary. We can be proactive and we can create opportunities for people because, mind you, everybody that was out there for 30 days, we were volunteering. Mm-hmm. People had work, people had school, people had families, people had mental health, concerns and different things, but people sacrificed all that to be there every single day just to fight for our voting rights, to defend our democracy. And at that point, we realized we need to create some sort of structure that can support this work and allow the people that are on the front lines, including ourselves, to be uplifted and to be taken care of in that process as well. So with that being said, we were able to create a nonprofit organization called Protect the Vote, and we started that in May. We went through the Secretary of State and got that approved, and then we are in the process of getting our 501c3 status, so we're almost there, and we should have that soon. And we've been able to get grants from people like Black Voters Matter. New Georgia Project supported us with an event that we held for the youth. And shout out to just all the other organizations who have been able to support some of the work that we've been doing. But through that, we've been able to, hire canvassers or hire people to phone bank or, accommodate people for their time and their effort and their energy, because it's taxing. It is very taxing, and everybody knows that who's in this movement. So for us, the biggest blessing has been to work together to defend our voting rights, to protect our voting rights, to defend our democracy, but also uplift the organizers and the volunteers and the activists who are on the ground year round.
And that's the awesome part of all of this. And, one of the reasons why I came up with Justice Fighter podcast is to be able to highlight the work. Because it's just that. It's a lot of work. And the people that are on the front lines need to be able to have a platform to talk about the work. And so moving forward, we have a new legislative session that will start in January. Of course, we have elections that are coming up in May for the primaries and the judicial races, and then in November for the midterms and the statewide races. But what do you see as, your future in this, but the future of activism in Georgia around these issues?
Yeah, so the future with Protect the Vote is certainly to continue mobilizing. We were able to collectively mobilize more than 2,000 voters, and that is a lot. When you think of these elections, how close they are. Some of these elections were lost by less than 50 votes. And we were so fortunate to be out there. People would tell us, I didn't even know we had an election. I have no idea where to vote in this election. I don't even know who's running in this election. And we could answer those questions in real time on the spot. So we plan to continue doing more of that. We plan to continue doing GOTV, Get Out the Vote word, making sure we're educating and informing voters, because that's also important. We don't want people to just vote. We want people to vote informed. And we plan to monitor what's going on in the state legislature by notifying people, hey, now this bill is going through. Here's what you can do. You can sign this petition. You can contact your lawmaker. You can use social media as a way to raise awareness. We want to continue engaging people around that. And then also we want to continue empowering our communities. That's one of the biggest things we also do. When we're out here doing the work, we want to make it an empowering space for people. It is very taxing, as we shared earlier, and a lot of people are running on fumes or really walking on thin ice, and we don't want it to be like that. So we want to continue working to create more opportunities for activists, for organizers to be able to be accommodated and taken care of for the work that they're doing. So I hope that we can work alongside more community partners to do that. As far as the movement, it continues, and there is so many avenues. Just yesterday, I attended a movie screening at the Justice for Georgia headquarters, and it was Finding Kendrick Johnson. As we know, the tragic story of a 17-year-old who was found rolled up in a gym mat in Valdosta, Georgia. If you do not know his story, please Google his story, Kendrick Johnson. Finding Kendrick Johnson. I highly recommend that everyone watch that documentary as soon as possible. It is one of the most powerful documentaries I've ever seen. And it just really sheds light on the corruption and so much that's going on in our system, from a local level at the school all the way up to the FBI. And we have to understand, first of all, that this fight is not just local. It's not just in our state. It is national. It is a world. It is an international fight. And we have to just take step by step. You know, some of the takeaways from the movie, or excuse me, the calls to action was to watch the documentary, share the documentary, sign the petition that has garnered more than $1.5 million to reopen the case, which ultimately the case was reopened this year. So those items work, those actions work, you know, and also in Valdosta, they're going to be having a week of action in January. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. So there's just a lot of ways to get involved.
Well, that's awesome. So, you know, one thing that I love about this movement is the energy of young women that are leading the movement. And I'm sure there are young women out there that are looking up to you and so many other female leaders in this movement. What advice would you have for them or women that are listening to this podcast on how they can get involved and how they can help to push this forward?
My advice is to get involved in whatever way you can, and know that your way is not going to ever look the same as anyone else's way. Your way will be unique to you, to your traits, to your skill sets, to your characteristics, to your strengths that you bring to the movement. Don't try to be somebody else. Be the best version of yourself, because we need that version to keep moving forward in this movement. I tell everybody, just give what you can. You know, if you can give money to a GoFundMe, do that. If you can make some calls, do that. If you can sign a petition, do that. If you can go to protest, do that. If you can go to a fundraiser and donate some clothes and shoes, do that. Do anything. Anything makes a difference. I want to repeat that. Anything makes a difference. No act is too small. No act is too big. Everybody doesn't need to be on the front lines. Everybody's not going to be in the courts. Everybody's not going to be in the legislature. Find your role and own it, and understand that your contribution is so valuable and we need it. So find what ways you can give and give that. And also take care of yourself in this process, because we have conversations around this all the time, but it's emotionally, physically, mentally taxing, and we need us to be alive to be able to keep fighting. We need us to be able to be healthy to keep fighting. So, you know, find that balance, and it's hard. It's not, I'm still figuring it out. I don't have the balance yet, but, you know, make sure that you have your squad and your people who you can vent to, or people that can pour back into you, and just, you know, just come in this space knowing that you are valued, you are loved, and we're not going to be able to do it by ourselves. That's impossible. But together, we will be able to make strides.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what's your final message to the people listening to Justice Fighter Podcast? How can they get in touch with you? How can they join the movement? What can they do?
Yeah, please make sure to follow us on social media. You can follow us at Protect the Vote GA. You can also follow Promote Positivity Movement. We're still active as well. And I'm on all platforms at Hannah Joy TV. And then there's other organizations to tap into, whether it's Justice for Georgia, Change Creators, the People's Uprising, you know, NAACP Atlanta. There's so many other organizations. So I encourage you, find your group and know that you are valued in this movement. And, you know, I want to thank again Brother Griggs for being a special advisor to us, a mentor, a big brother, a friend, someone who is always there. And I hope you feel your flowers every day, because you're not just out here in the streets. You also are working in a whole law firm, helping people who have been affected by tragic car accidents as your day job. So, I mean, you do this literally 24/7, and I'm so proud of you and everybody in this movement. And I know we have so much more to talk, so we'll certainly revisit this conversation in the future. But I just send my love to everybody watching this, and a lot of positive vibes.
Well, Hannah, just know that the platform is always open. I look forward to having you numerous times, and we can talk about so much. But everybody's listening on all platforms. Please go follow Hannah. She's doing phenomenal work. We just covered just a snippet of the wonderful work that she is doing. And know this, you know, we are fighting in this movement. We are winning in this movement. We are bringing more people to the table, and we get victories every single day. But the only thing that's missing in this movement is you. You can find your niche. Like she said, you don't have to be on the front lines. You don't have to be in the courtroom. You don't have to be, right there with the picket signs, but you can help this movement grow, because whatever the future brings, we are going to be the ones that push that change. So always know that. This is Attorney Gerald Griggs with the Justice Fighter Podcast. Please help by sharing this podcast, by making sure that you guys are subscribed on all channels, and by getting involved in the struggle, because we have many, many more battles to win, but we are going to win them.
This is the Justice Fighter Podcast. Justice Fighter Podcast with Attorney Gerald Griggs. Attorney G. Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all. Let Attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justice Fighter Podcast, y'all.